Okay. Whew. Good morning, everyone. How are we feeling this morning? Buenos dias. Good. So we're going to go ahead and get started and people are going to be creeping in, coming in, and that is okay. Before we do introductions, I'm going to go through some housekeeping items. But first and foremost, my name is Jolene Avendaño, and I am the Partner Engagement Coordinator at the National Center for Farmworker Health, or Ncfh. And thank you so much for all of you for being here with us. We ask that you keep yourself muted during the presentation. We will have frequently asked questions after this, so it's going to be a time to go through any questions that you guys submitted or anything that comes up during the presentation. Also, be sure to type all of your questions in the chat box. We will be kind of reviewing it as we go along, and anything that doesn't get answered today will be answered. We'll be sending out the presentation and answering your questions there. And then finally, interpretation is available. Interpretación está accesible cuando ven el botón abajo de Zoom, if you see an accessible little button at the bottom for interpretation in Spanish, en español. With that said, I'm going to let the rest of the team introduce themselves and we will start our presentation. Paige, do you want to go ahead and start us off?
Sure. Thanks, Jolene. Good morning, everybody. My name is Paige Menking. I am the Manager of Public Health Strategy at Ncfh and working on these demonstration project grants. Emailed with a handful of y'all, so really great to see your faces and see y'all on this morning, and excited to get started.
Thank you, Paige. Bethany, you want to introduce yourself?
Estoy en el canal de español, si puedes hacer interpretación para hablantes de inglés. Ok.
Yes.
Yo soy Bethany Alcauter. Es un placer estar aquí. Estamos súper emocionados para este proyecto, a ver todas las cosas buenas que están haciendo en sus comunidades.
Bethany will be in our Spanish channel, but she is very excited to be here with us. So thank you all. Eric?
Good morning, everyone. I think it's good morning here. It might be a good afternoon where you are. But I'm the CFO at the National Center for Farmworker Health, Ncfh, and I'm here to support the program in the finance area. So I've been working Ncfh for about 17 years now. So we're excited for these grant opportunities to all of y'all, and looking forward to working with you.
Thank you, Eric. And I don't think Sylvia is here with us. Sylvia Partida is our executive director. But yeah, we'll go ahead and start. So welcome everybody to the information session for the demonstration project grants. We are going to talk about the demonstration project grants, give you a little overview of that. So the National Center for Farmworker Health is seeking to support the work of organizations to stop the spread of COVID-19. And so we are essentially looking to fund projects that would support vaccination, testing, treatment, and prevention of COVID-19. And we are looking to award 45 to 50 grants. And all between all these awards will be $50,000 or less, and you can request up to $100,000, as you can see there. So eligibility, we are looking at community-based organizations, healthcare service providers, faith-based organizations, migrant education and/or migrant Head Start programs, housing providers, agriculture employers, and labor unions. And further down in the presentation, we'll talk a little bit more about eligibility and what doesn't cover the grant. Next, we'll talk about timeline, which I know a lot of questions were around timeline. So the deadline for applications is May 1st, and have your application submitted by 5:30 p.m. of May 1st. And we are awarding a lot of these on a rolling basis beginning April 16th. And we'll talk a little bit more about the rolling basis application and reviewing. But projects will start, the project period does start as early as April 16th. So when you get the award, or that's when you would be starting your project. And the final notification of awards would be May 15th, with the project period ending on September 29th. So that leaves you a deadline for a final report of November 1st. And we'll go ahead and talk a little bit later about the final report and if you make it to that stage. So the online application, that is where you will be submitting a lot of your templates and a lot of your information. The application does contain a brief organizational background question. So go ahead and answer anything about your organization, provide a brief narrative of summary questions, project plans, what is it that you plan to do with this money, how would this support your organization in the program, as well as templates for proposed project work plans and budgets. And we'll talk a little bit more about budgets at the end of this presentation. Just a thing to note is that you cannot save and return to your application. So go ahead and look at the application, look at what it's asking, the questions you need to be answering, the templates you need to fill out, and then submit all those answers when you are ready. Just something to make note of. And then, as I mentioned before, applications will be accepted until 5:30 on May 1st, and we will be reviewing those as they come, but we won't review any applications that come in after the deadline. So just as an FYI. I will pass this on to Paige.
All right, thanks, Julian. So I'm just going to be talking a little bit about, once your application is submitted, what the review process is going to look like, what are we going to be scoring based off. So, similar to most grants, we're really going to be looking at the scope of work, at the impact, and your evidence of partnership. So really looking at, what is the scope of activities that you submitted? Do we have all the information that we need? Is everything complete? And looking at the impact. So how many numbers of workers will be impacted by your project? How many of those proportionally are really vulnerable populations? But I want to make sure y'all know that we are going to be kind of looking at things in proportion to the amount of money that you're requesting, right? So if you are going to be running a smaller program and asking for a smaller amount of money, that is not going to be a mark against you whatsoever, as long as it's proportional to the grant. We really want to see evidence of partnership. So who are you working with? Do you have a demonstrated history of partnership with folks? And kind of who are you working with on this, or are you going it alone? And your budget justification, of course, we want to make sure the funds are being used appropriately and that it's commensurate with the project that you're going to be doing. It's also really important, these projects really needed to be, started yesterday, right? So we want to make sure that once you apply and the award is given, that you'd be able to hit the ground running and get started right away with your project. So we want to see a demonstration and a commitment to get your project started within 2 weeks of getting the award. I've gotten a few questions already over the last week about what kind of activities can be funded. So wanted to spend some time clarifying about that. Unfortunately, we cannot spend funds outside of the US. So it does need to be funds all spent here in the US. We cannot spend funds on food alcohol, tobacco, entertainment, things like that, unfortunately, are not going to be covered. We also want to discourage projects that don't include partnerships. So as I said before, we really want to see that you are working with other local agencies, other groups that also serve farm workers or public health entities. And we really want to see more than just education. So this is not just an education and outreach grant. This is really about providing direct services that are really focused on COVID mitigation. So we want to see some of those direct services included in your work plan as well. If you do receive the award, we will have a mandatory orientation and we'll set dates for those soon. We'll probably do those kind of rolling as well for those who get an award earlier. So we'll have more information on that in the future. And as we mentioned before, that reporting, that final report will be due by November 1st. You can send it earlier if your project was short. We would love to see it earlier, but definitely no later than November 1st. So we're going to spend the bulk of today's session just answering y'all's questions. So we just wanted to go over all of that really quickly. The RFP has a lot more detailed information, which is available in English and Spanish on our website. So feel free to look at that. We can drop the link here in the chat. As well, here is my contact information, Eric's contact information. All of y'all have that already because you've gotten a couple emails from me. But with that, I'm going to stop sharing so we can take some questions. And I see the chat. We got some already. So I am going to just direct some questions to folks. So Jen, the question was, can you download a Word version of the application to work on? We don't have that right now, but that is a great idea. So we can probably get you that because we did do it from a Word document. So Jolynn, is that something we can probably make available for folks? All right, cool. I'm seeing a thumbs up. So Jen, we will work on getting that posted to the website. 5:30 Eastern, no, 5:30 Central Time. So the application deadline is 5:30 Central Time on May 1st. Eric, can you answer about whether the funds have to be expended by the end of September?
They do. I just saw Bethany's response to that. Yes, they would have to be because of the time frame of this is so critical, I think, to get this a part of the project completed.
All right. And Eric, did you want to also answer about retroactive funds?
I'm still looking into that. I believe so, but I would need to confirm that. But I believe it would be acceptable due to the, the rapid, what we're trying to do with this project and get it out fast. So I would just need to confirm that one, but I'm pretty sure that could be possible. Yes.
Great. Thank you, Eric. And let's see, we are a Migrant Head Start program. Our peak season in Florida is between November to May/June. Families migrate to pick crops up north beginning in June. Can this be made available in the fall as well? Although we serve seasonal farm worker families, the true migrants most likely will not be here after May or June. Bethany, did you want to answer that question?
Acerca de esa pregunta, Pamela, es si ustedes piensan que pueden lanzar un proyecto antes que se vayan en junio, eso sería bueno porque tenemos que gastar todos esos fondos terminando en el fin de septiembre. Entonces, si pueden hacer algo en mayo o junio, nosotros vamos a trabajar muy rápido en revisando las aplicaciones o las solicitudes. Entonces, si pueden hacer eso, eso sería mejor.
Thanks, Bethany. So just to say that again in English, if you can do it by May or June, that would definitely be preferred because we have to spend all of our CDC funds by the end of December. So there is that timeline on our end. So certainly if you can do it over the summer, that would be preferred. And then Jen's question about what will the reporting look like, narrative, how detailed. So we can definitely work on a template and get that out, closer to the reporting deadline. Unless, Bethany, did you have anything else to add about how detailed we'll want that reporting to be? And how detailed we want the narrative to be. So important thing about the actual application narrative is there are word caps on a lot of the questions. So no more than 250 words for most of those kind of narrative related questions. So not a huge amount of detail. We want you to get as much as you can in those 250 words, but we're really trying to focus on accessibility with this process because we know everybody's trying to get these programs started as soon as possible. So we don't want this to be a grant application that takes you a month to fill out. So definitely keep that in mind, but yeah, the word limit is 250 to a lot of the different questions. Bethany, did you want to add anything to that? And thanks everyone for the interpretation caused a little bit of a delay for Bethany to hear it.
¿Cuál es la pregunta, Paige?
Like how much of a detail we want in the reporting, what the reporting is going to look like, and how much detail we want in the narrative and financial budget.
En la aplicación, creo que ya tenemos como unos ejemplos de la propuesta y hay un como tabla también para poner las actividades y todo eso. Todos los detalles que están en la aplicación es que te tienen que poner. Yo creo que en el documento que explica esa beca tiene los datos que vamos a requerir de los proyectos. Hay datos que a lo mejor no van a aplicar a tu proyecto y eso está bien. Por ejemplo, si no están haciendo nada con pruebas de COVID, no tienen que colectar esta información. Pero si es acerca de vacunación o algo y están trabajando en eso, sí vamos a requerir esos datos de ustedes.
All right, thanks, Bethany. So I'll repeat that in English real quick. So there are some examples in the application, so you can kind of follow those examples that we put. There's also a kind of worksheet template. And so it certainly doesn't need to be super detailed, but we do want to get the main gist of what you are planning to do. As far as the reporting, we only need what's relevant. So if you're not doing COVID testing, you don't need to provide information about COVID testing, but we do want to see, what you've been doing. And we'll send out more information on the reporting later, but it certainly won't be a huge and onerous reporting process. All right, Raquel, would these funds be able to be allocated towards staff time and or operating costs of COVID testing and vaccination? Eric, do you want to take that one?
I think so, yes. I mean, that sounds like a direct program cost.
Great. I think it cannot be used for indirect costs. Is that right, Eric?
I mean, I'm going to have to check on that one, but I believe they can. It would just need to come. I believe so. I mean, if you have an indirect rate, it should be allowable. If you don't have an indirect rate, you could use the 10% de minimis. So, because I don't think we would put any restriction on that because it's not allowable cost through the uniform guidance. So
All right, I got another question for you, Eric. You're popular in the next few questions, all right? If awarded, will the grant funds be paid out immediately or will we be required to submit receipts along the way?
Yeah, this is a reimbursement. So you would need to submit invoices. We're working on that. Once you're awarded, you will get a subaward with an example of an invoice template. And because of, again, because this is such a rapid demonstration grant process, we're probably going to require monthly invoices because we felt like quarterly probably was too long. So we want you to get paid quickly. So we're going to require monthly invoices.
Thanks, Eric. But invoices and not receipts, is that correct?
Correct. Yeah. You need to be careful. I mean, we'll be monitoring you as well. So, you just want to follow the uniform guidance, your internal controls, make sure that you do have backup receipts. We require timesheets. So, if you're requiring salaries, we might monitor you at some point and require backup documentation, but we're not, you know what I mean? Just be prepared for that. We will probably we could request a copy of your audits. We just want to make sure that everyone is in compliance. So we're not going to bombard you with that right away, but at some point in the project, you could be required to submit backup documentation for like a monthly invoice or something like that. But not required monthly, but be prepared, you could be asked for that documentation.
Awesome. Thanks, Eric. And thank you all for your patience. There's so many questions in the chat. I'm trying to make my way through them all. Can effort span more?
Excuse me.
Oh,
I saw something just fly by. I didn't know. It looks like in the proposals it said indirect cost was not allowable. Okay. I didn't know that. Okay.
All right. Thanks for confirming. Can efforts span more than one county? Certainly. We would love to see efforts that go across multiple counties. And can funds be used to support rent and utilities? I believe that's a yes. Bethany, will you confirm that for me?
Si está bien, voy a contestar algunas preguntas y Pamela puede quedar en el canal de inglés por un ratito. Ok. Yo estoy viendo muchas preguntas acerca de eso, si pueden usar los fondos para actividades que ya han hecho. Ustedes pueden hacer esto. Eric está confirmando, pero parece que todo está bien. Que pueden usar los fondos para cubrir gastos empezando en el 17 de febrero y adelante. Entonces, Eric va a confirmar esto. Entonces, si ustedes están planeando en hacer esto, por favor, manda un mensaje a Paige y Paige puede poner su correo electrónico en la chat y vamos a confirmar directamente con ustedes. Pero parece que eso va a estar bien. Antes del 17 de febrero, no podemos cubrir gastos. Y sabemos que muchos de ustedes ya han gastado bastante dinero, pero es la regla que tenemos. Hay una pregunta más que yo quise contestar. Sí, son los fondos originarios, son de los centros del control de enfermedades, pero ustedes van a recibir el dinero directamente del Centro Nacional para la Salud de Trabajadores Agrícolas. Uno más, déjeme ver.
Bethany, let me repeat those really quick before I lose them. I just want them to be here in English for the recording for later. So the first question was about the retroactive funds. We think that everybody will be able to do retroactive back to February 17th, which is our notice of awards, but it won't be able to go before that. So we can confirm that once we get final confirmation, and I'll put my email in the chat. And if that applies to you, please shoot me an email and I'll let you know as soon as we're aware and can confirm that. But it should hopefully be February 17th, but no earlier than that. And then the other was about, oh, now I lost it. Bethany, what was
Rent and utilities.
Oh, rent.
No,
Go ahead.
Eso ya fue traducido porque Paige contestó esa pregunta. Pero la otra cosa, si está bien que podemos pagar por actividades que ya han hecho, nada más van a poner en la tabla como la clínica o las pruebas que hicieron o algo y las fechas, y vamos a ver cuáles fechas eran y vamos a entender que ya era pasado. Preferimos que también hacen cosas en el futuro, pero no estamos diciendo que no vamos a aceptar una aplicación que solamente tiene cosas que ya han hecho.
So just go ahead and put the dates that they were done in your application if you are going to ask for retroactive funds. We would certainly prefer that you're doing some things in the future, but we're not saying now that we won't accept it if it's only things that happened in the past. And then did you want to answer another question, Bethany?
Uno más, alguien preguntó acerca de inmigrantes en comparación de migrantes. Está bien, no importamos si viven en tu comunidad todo el año o si son migrantes. Solamente es que tienen que ser trabajadores agrícolas o familiares de trabajadores agrícolas.
Awesome, great question. So the question was whether it matters whether they're migrants or immigrants that you are serving with this project, and it does not. So they can either be folks who live in your community year round or who move around, but as long as they are farm workers and ag workers, that is, or families, that's the important piece. All right, so let me get to some more questions. For Eric, could funds be used to offer stipends to clinical volunteers administering vaccines?
Yes.
Awesome. Simple answer. Great. Thank you. What are the Ncfh acknowledgement requirements for award recipients, i.e. this program is sponsored by grant funding from Ncfh? Do you have an answer to that one, Eric?
Okay. Can you repeat that in the question?
Yeah. So what are the acknowledgement requirements? Like, do they need to put something on every flyer that says it's from Ncfh?
Oh, yes. Especially it needs to be acknowledged that it's from the CDC. I mean, when you get your grant award, the grant number, the CFDA number, all of that information pertinent will be on your subaward document. So you need to list that. I think they're sensitive to logo information, but we need to always, when we disseminate publications, to identify the source.
And so we can come up with some boilerplate language to share that we'll put in the award document for what to include. So Dulce asked, can you say a little bit more about how the project needs to include more than just education initiatives? What kind of direct service projects can be included? There are lots of examples written out in the RFP of different things, but we're really wanting to see vaccination clinics, PPE provision, redoing housing so it's safer, all sorts of things that are really going to affect mitigation and are not simply just education and outreach. So that's the idea behind that direct services. And if you have questions about particular activities and whether those would qualify, Dulce, feel free to email me and we can talk about that more, or put it in the chat and we can talk about it. So just to clarify, does funds should be retroactive back to February 17th mean that our project could have started on that date? Yes. Oh, and Jan, that was the question I forgot to translate. So the funds are from the CDC, but from us. So you'll get the funds directly from Ncfh. And can a university-based organization apply if working in collaboration with CBOs? Yes. All right. Sorry, I might be going a little too fast for the interpreter. I apologize. I'll go slower. Can the program be something we're already doing, or does it need to be a new program to demonstrate specific outcomes? It can certainly be a program that's existing. If it is not already demonstrating the outcomes that we're asking for, we'd like you to modify it to make it, make sense. Maybe you need to look at your objectives, look at your target audience, and make it fit to this grant. It certainly needs to be serving farm workers and their families. So if that's not a target of your current program, that would need to shift. Let's see.
Paige, there was a question at the very beginning that we skipped, and I just want to make sure that it gets answered. It was can 2 organizations partner for 1 award?
Oh, good one. Thank you, Jolene. I'm sorry, I skipped over that one. Yes. Eric, how would we handle that?
I mean, like if there's 2, they're part, say that again. I'm sorry, just make sure I understand.
Whoever asked that, do you want to unmute and ask that question? Maybe provide a little more
2 organizations or something like that. I'm just trying to understand the question.
Yes, my name is Roberto Cruz. I'm with the Florida Rural Legal Services. My question goes to whether the RFQ and the application can be submitted not only by 1 organization, but by 2 organizations. Maybe one that's focused on the legal aspects of providing services and another one that's more focused on the education part of it. And joining those 2 organizations would make our action plan a little bit more broad than, different applications.
Mm-hmm. Yes, so I would, yes, that's allowable. I mean, I wouldn't see why not.
All right, thank you very much.
Mm-hmm. I saw a question fly by, another one that was interesting about the CBO. If they're small, they're not required to do audited financial statements. No, but again, we might require from you financial statements or some kind of documentation on your invoices periodically, just to do a little audit, just to make sure that you have the proper backup. But no, you wouldn't be disqualified because you don't have audited financial statements.
Great, thanks, Eric. Sorry, y'all, I'm trying to catch up. So if y'all sent me a direct message, I'm not going to see it till I get down to that. So I'm trying not to lose all my questions. There was a question about whether this applies to H-2A workers. Yes, certainly it does. We would really love to see projects for H-2A workers. We will be recording, just to say this again, I know we said that in the chat, but we will be recording this. We are recording this and we will be posting it on the website along with the answers to any questions that we haven't gotten to in this recording. There is a question about expanding on the definition of agricultural worker. So flowers versus food, and another one about food processing plants. Bethany, can you answer that question?
Yo creo que eso sí es agricultura. Básicamente podemos poner también en la página de web que básicamente eso es la agricultura, son todas las industrias que están en el código de NAICS 1.11 o 1.12 y eso cubren mucho el crecimiento y sembramiento de muchas cosas, no solamente la comida está incluido en eso. Y cubre como trabajadores que trabajan en el rancho de verduras y frutas y también de animales. Eso está bien. La única cosa que creo que sería un poquito complicado para algunos de ustedes es ustedes que trabajan con trabajadores que están trabajando en empacadores, que no están en un rancho. Si ustedes quieren apoyar a sus trabajadores, por favor también manden un mensaje a Paige y vamos a hablar acerca de tu situación.
All right, thanks, Bethany, and thank you to your rooster who's also accompanying your answers. So I'll just say those again in English. So anybody who is working under the NAICS code 111 or 112 will count as ag workers. So it doesn't have to be food. It can be lots of types of agriculture as long as they're under those codes. If you have particular questions, like for example, if they're in a packing plant, something like that, again, shoot me an email and we'll get individual confirmation of your situation to make sure that it applies. But certainly we have a broad, definition of what an agricultural worker is and their families.
También, Paige, estoy viendo muchas preguntas acerca de una colaboración, una coalición o qué son los socios. Queremos ver si es posible que nos gusta ver más socios involucrados en el proyecto, porque todos sabemos para apoyar a los trabajadores agrícolas es muy importante tener mucho apoyo entre servicios legales, servicios de educación, servicios de salud y todo eso. Entonces, creemos que esos proyectos van a ser más fuertes si ustedes ya están trabajando juntos. Pero también entendemos que eso no es el ambiente en todas las comunidades. Hay muchas áreas que solamente hay una clínica voluntaria que están proveyendo servicios de salud a los trabajadores. O solamente hay servicios legales. Perdón. Entonces, no es algo malo si no están trabajando en una coalición o con otros socios, pero queremos ver esto cuando sea posible.
So just to say that again in English for the recording, we really do want to see partnerships, formal and informal. We really want to see that you're working with other organizations, that there's different types of organizations represented. We also know that there are a lot of people who don't have the luxury of being in a place with lots of different organizations serving farm workers, and we are certainly going to be taking that into account and looking at where you're located and how many different types of resources are available. There might only be a legal resource or only a health resource, and so that is very understood. But if you are in an area that has lots of different organizations, then we would like to see y'all working together. I got a question about if 2 projects are being done, should there be 2 different applications or just one?
Are they 2 separate organizations, and would they be applying for 2 separate budgets? And it seems like they would.
Alicia, would you like to unmute and ask that question, maybe elaborate a little?
Can you hear me? Hello?
Oh, we can hear you very, very quietly.
Okay, I think I have a really bad reception on here. I apologize. My question is, if an employer is doing different projects, do we have to apply, in different applications, or can those be submitted within the same application?
So then the projects are significantly different?
Yeah, so I heard mentioning about, for example, the clinics and maybe educational programs. Do we apply for, an application for one of each, or can that be submitted at the same time? How does that work?
I think you can submit them when they are ready. And I would suggest, yes, submitting them as 2 different grant applications, especially if one is more time bound than the other and you want the funds immediately, go ahead and get that one in as quickly as possible. And you can maybe follow up with the second one later. But yeah, I think that will give us more liberty or a little bit more flexibility in awarding the grant. So yes, I would suggest 2 applications.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Great question. So there is a question about what date will you get the funds? So that is a great question, Eric. It's a month after the award, I'm guessing, if you're doing monthly invoices.
Yeah, exactly. So we're again, and it's on a reimbursement basis. So an example, if the funds are awarded on May, where was it? May 1st. Then obviously your first invoice would be due in June, by like June 15th or something like that. We're still working on the template right now, but we'll probably put the invoices need to be in by the 15th of the following month. So yeah, so then your funds would be, for an example, depending how fast you get your invoice in, we'll do weekly payments. So you get your invoice in by Wednesday of each week. That's when we're doing checks, for an example. So you have your invoice in by Wednesday, the checks would go out on Thursday. So we're going to try and be really fast payment turnaround on this, as fast as possible.
And let me provide some more timeline information. We're going to start the first round of reviews next week. As we mentioned, these will be on a rolling basis. So if you want to be in the very first, review process, get your applications in by Monday, by the end of the day on Monday, because we'll be starting the review process on Tuesday. So we will hopefully let at least some of those folks know by the 16th. All right, so Bethany has been answering a few questions in there that floriculture production does fall under code 111, and horse breeding is 112. So those do qualify. Bethany, I also got a message about cheese factory workers. Do you know that one off the top of your head?
Si están en un rancho, sí. Pero si está separado de un rancho, por favor, nos manda un mensaje por correo electrónico y vamos a hablar.
Great. So just send us an email if they are on a ranch or a dairy. It could count. If not, it might not. So send us an email and we will get final confirmation for you. All right, the last question I'm seeing is, can we also apply to other funders for the same project if the cost is above the funding limit, or are we requiring sole funding? Eric, do you have an answer to that? You're
I'm thinking about that one. I don't see why not. I don't think we were having any restriction on ceiling limits or anything like that. Bethany, I don't think so. I don't think we're having any where they can't apply for other funding for the same type. I wouldn't think so.
Pues yo creo que si quieren alcanzar como 500 trabajadores con este proyecto y quieren alcanzar otros 500, no veo ningún problema con esto, Eric. Si son diferentes y para hacerlo más amplio.
Yeah, so there shouldn't be any problem with that. If you want to do, 500 workers with this funding, 500 workers with another pot of funding to make it a larger project, that should be just fine. All right. Can you define the question on section 2 of the application? Oh, yes. Sorry, we missed that question up top. I apologize. Is your organization part of a farm worker focused coalition? What is kind of the definition of a coalition there? Bethany, I'm looking at you.
No tiene que ser nada formal. Nada más estamos viendo una coalición de un grupo de organizaciones que trabajan juntos acerca de cuestiones que afectan a los trabajadores agrícolas.
Thank you. So it doesn't have to be a formal coalition. We just want to see, if you're part of a group of organizations who work together to serve farm workers and their families. All right, Isabel, we are a statewide organization, and we have a question that asks to insert zip code for the primary project. It should allow more than one zip code. Jolynn, as our master survey builder, does it allow for more than one zip code? Yes. Okay, so you should be able to put in more than one. All right. What other questions? Oh, go ahead, Bethany.
Solo iba a decir, si es un programa para varios condados, pueden poner los nombres de los condados. Si es un proyecto para todo el estado, pueden poner el estado, no tienen que poner cada código, cada código postal.
Yeah, so if it is for the entire state or whatever, you do not need to list every zip code in the state. You can just write in the state. That will make it a little easier on us as well as on you guys. Can the program be something we're already doing? Yes, it does. It can be something you're already doing. It does need to meet the outcomes that we're requesting and meet, the requirements that we're requesting. So if your program is already aligned with what we're looking for, then that's great. If not, you might need to make some tweaks to the program to make it fit this particular RFP. All right, what other questions do folks have? Did we answer all of them?
There was one question, Paige, that they asked about, can funds be used to support rent/utilities, not food, as it was mentioned?
Great question. I believe it can. Bethany, can you confirm that? Or Eric?
I don't see why not, but it sounds a little indirect to me, but I'm not sure why the proposal was restricted for indirect, but I need to check on that.
Well, and I think we're talking about rent for farm workers. So
their housing. Oh, their housing. Oh, okay. Then yeah, I mean that would be what?
Eso es algo directo, porque si van a cubrir la renta, eso es, por ejemplo, porque los trabajadores, alguien está enfermo con COVID, no puede trabajar y están apoyando a esos trabajadores con COVID, por si tienen que pagar por una vivienda porque están en la cuarentena. Eso es algo directo que decidimos que está permitido. Solo es la comida y no pueden pagar por un grupo de mariachi o algo. Eso no podemos pagar.
Yeah. So yes, definitely the paying of the rent is a direct cost that is part of the program, and we would love to see that sort of thing in your proposals. We can't pay for a mariachi, as Bethany said, to have at the vaccination clinic, which is a bummer, a real bummer. We hope you can find some anyway, and then send us cool videos. Matthew, the question is not only open to health organizations. So there is a whole list of organizations in the RFP that you can see. So health organizations, other types of community-based organizations, labor unions, agricultural employers, lots of different folks. And I got a question about what percentage of the budget do the matching and in-kind contributions have to match? I don't think we're asking for matching funds, are we?
I wouldn't think so.
No, yeah, I don't think you need to have any matching funds.
I mean, if we're not requiring, if we're not allowing indirect, then I would say we would not have a match requirement.
Great. Can funds support farm worker vaccine promotores in farm worker communities to temporarily expand our outreach? Yesenia, yes, I think they can, but we want that to only be one part of the program. So we don't want it to be only outreach or education. So as long as there are other elements to the program as well. Rent assistance only for those in quarantine. Yes. Yeah. So just if it's part of a quarantine promotion program. So not general housing assistance. If there's some other reason, yeah, as Bethany said in the chat, if there's another reason to provide the rent assistance that's COVID related, let us know and we can evaluate that too. Oh, it does say in the RFP that in-kind matches are strongly encouraged but not required. Bethany, did you want to elaborate on that? I'm sorry, I'm speaking too fast again.
Si no es un requisito, pero si ya tienen un match, me falla mi español aquí, pues pon esto en la solicitud y vamos a anotarlo, pero no es un requisito.
So it's not a requirement, but if you do have one, go ahead and put it in the application. Sorry, I missed that part. And I missed a question. Oh, I'll answer that one directly. All right, any other questions? Feel free to unmute if you want to ask a question.
I have a question in regards, so we have a greenhouse in Wilcox, Arizona, but then we have our corporate in San Antonio. So would this only apply to the greenhouse? For example, we've done vaccination clinics in both our greenhouses and our office, but would the grant only apply to the greenhouse and not the corporate office?
I'm nodding and waiting for Bethany to confirm, but I think yes, just the greenhouse.
Y eso es la agricultura también.
Yeah.
A veces yo sé que como en New Jersey hacen mucho eso, trabajan en los invernaderos haciendo plantas para landscaping y las yardas y todo, y eso es agricultura, cuando producen las plantas.
Yeah, so the greenhouse definitely counts as agriculture, but the headquarters likely would not. But if you want to ask in more detail, Bridget, feel free to shoot me an email.
Perfect, thank you.
Yeah.
So this is Vanessa from Central Virginia. I have a small nonprofit here that works with mainly H-2A workers and other migrant seasonal farm workers. And what we decided, we started in early February when our first wave of H-2A workers came in. And we looked at that question. I mean, I don't think we're talking about a corporate office because we're talking about slightly smaller places here. But what we ended up doing is having sort of a new acronym for essential farm workers, which extended to the families of the migrant and seasonal farm workers. And then a lot of the local growers and their families work side by side with the migrant and seasonal farm workers. So that was sort of an additional benefit of what we're doing. We don't count that in our data for serving migrant and seasonal farm workers, but the greater benefit to the public health in serving those other essential farm workers. Again, not corporate office, but local people who work alongside the H-2A workers, because it, all of it is so intertwined, as you all know, since you work in these situations, especially when they're smaller family farms where local community members, local sort of like ex-MSFW Latino workers and more, it's just sort of a whole conglomerate of people. So I think that when we look at this work, I look at that as an added public health benefit, even if we don't count it in the data for serving our H-2A worker population.
Thanks so much for sharing, Vanessa. That's great. We got a question about whether the budget oh, go ahead, Bethany.
Oh, yeah, mis gallos ya están cantando. Veo una pregunta del propuesta del budget y si está bien, si es más de una página, no hay problema.
Yep, so no problem if your budget is more than one page, that's totally fine. You can just add more columns in the template or more rows.
Yes, more description, the better, actually. I mean, for me.
Eric wants to see like 10-page budget proposals. And to answer out loud, one of the questions from the chat was, no, I lost it. Oh, if you are doing the match, if you can report out the data for the whole program, including the match funding. If we would like to see the results specific to this program, if you can't separate those out, let us know. We can work with you on a case-by-case basis. What else you got? We got time for maybe one more question. All right, I think that might be it. Well, thank you all so much for coming. I'm going to put my email in the chat again for everybody in case you want to send me another question or you have, an individualized question. And lots of folks sent me messages about the retroactive date. So I'm going to make sure to save the chat and get in touch with all of y'all about that in the future, and keep an eye out for more information from us. Always feel free to reach out to me with any questions. And we really appreciate you being here. We look forward to seeing your applications. Thank you all so much.